Hello, welcome to Coffee with Kathleen. Do you want to go on an adventure today, like somewhere fun? Okay, so let me talk to you about the terrain that we're going to be in. It's very tender and beautiful and blooming terrain of faith and belief. And I know, like, if you're just now tuning in, you're like, aren't you supposed to be talking about business and leadership and, journeys, career journeys? Like, what are you talking about traversing the terrain of faith and belief for? But just stick with me, because we're not going to be talking about doctrines. We're not going to, and then, so therefore, no dogma, no religion. We're going to talk instead about living, breathing experiences of the heart and how that informs who we are and how we show up in the world. And how we show up in the world, of course, is how we show up for our families, as leaders, as social beings, as creatures, as community members, right? All of this is connected together. You cannot separate it. Who you are is who you are. And you carry that with you everywhere you go, no matter what kind of reserve or face or, whatever you try to put on. And look, I like putting on a face, or lips at least, right? So I know what I'm talking about. So look, I'm going to tell you a little story, how I like to do. And so recently I was just hanging out, actually delayed flight in the airport. And I don't know, but when you're traveling with people that you work with, and then you end up experiencing travel delays or difficulties, that's when the really real stuff comes out, y'all. And life is like that too. When we go through difficulties with each other as humans, and we decide to just relax into whatever the difficulty is, and, maybe get some extra chit chat in with somebody that we don't get to talk to all the time, or whatever the case may be, then we start unfolding in a more vulnerable, open, and honest way. So anyway, I was asked during this travel delay conversation, like what I believe in. And the reason I was asked that is because I started looking through my phone, idly scrolling, how we do. And I read my horoscope for the day. And look, I don't read just one horoscope. I read 3 different horoscopes, because I'm a Leo, born at the end of July. And then I'm also a rabbit in Chinese astrology. And then I have this other app that gives me this totally different view based on my moon, my rising moon, and all of that other stuff, which I don't understand very well, but it's fine. And sometimes these horoscopes conflict with each other, or they have very different fact sets as part of it. And so the person was sort of asking me, like, is this something that you really believe in? And I said, yeah. I said, I used to believe in nothing, but now I choose to believe in everything. And he responded, well, believing in everything is the same as believing in nothing. And in many ways it is. It is exactly the same as believing in nothing, because if you believe in everything, then you believe in a whole mass of contradictions. Although I believe that in paradox and contradiction, like, there are little kernels of truth and these struggles between things. But look, I want to take the good out of everything. So if I read a horoscope that tells me, as this one did, that I was about to have like this amazing day where my communication, my social, and my intellectual capabilities were going to come together and everything was going to be, badass for me, of course I'm going to believe in that. Of course I'm going to lean into that. What's good, right? Like, tell me what's good. And so, I choose to believe in these things, and we choose to believe in all kinds of things. And we might believe in something, and then ultimately we give up that something. And then we believe in something else. And so beliefs are malleable. They change. And that's what gives me great hope in the world, by the way, is that many of the things that we currently see going on, many of the bitterest debates or whatever that we have going on, are about beliefs. And we can give those things up. if we choose to. We can learn more information. We can have a more compassionate, engaged worldview. All of these things are possible. And I believe in that. And I'm working on that for myself, right? I'm not perfect. I want to continue to improve my belief system. And I want to believe in it and take in and take on everything good. But then there's a different level. There's a different level other than belief. And the different level is faith. And what I mean by faith is that it's not belief based, because it comes out of your own experience. It comes out of your heritage. It comes out of your lineage. It comes out of things that your body knows that maybe your mind doesn't even consciously know. Like when I put one foot in front of the other, I have faith that the world is going to hold me. I don't think that suddenly the ground beneath my feet is going to crumble and I'm going to fall into a hole, right? I just have faith that I can move forward. I have faith that there is a tomorrow, and that I can engage in that. And you know what I also have faith in? And again, faith is based on experience mostly. It's things that we just know. We know at a cellular level that they're true. And one of the things that I think is beautiful for me is I have faith in me. In a given situation, I have faith that I'm going to be able to figure it out or make my way through it, or that I am equipped with the things I need to get through it. Ultimately, even when I'm experiencing an intellectual or a belief-based crisis about X, Y, or Z, or some particular situation, the underlying and the overarching theme that surrounds me in that moment is that ultimately I do have faith in myself. And the reason why I'm even doing the grappling is because ultimately I think that I will eventually find a way through whatever the problem is. I also have faith in you. And I'm so happy that you're here and you're watching this. And I have faith in the essential human nature, and the goodness of it, and the goodness of the world, and the beauty and truth that is nature. I have deep and abiding faith in all of those things. So as always, I'd love to read you something I didn't come up with and that I didn't write, because there's so much wisdom in the world to take advantage of. Why do I have to write it all and make it feel like it's unique or Kathleen? It could just move through me in this moment. So there's a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. That's a mouthful. Okay. I am too alone in the world, and yet not alone enough to make every moment holy. I'm too tiny in this world and not tiny enough just to lie before you like a thing, shrewd and secretive. I want my own will, and I want simply to be with my will as it goes toward action. And in those quiet, sometimes hardly moving times, when something is coming near, I want to be with those who know secret things, or else alone. I want to be a mirror for your whole body, and I never want to be blind or to be too old to hold up your heavy and swaying picture. I want to unfold. I don't want to stay folded anywhere, because where I am folded, there I am a lie. And I want my grasp of things to be true before you. I want to describe myself like a painting that I looked at closely for a long time, like a saying that I finally understood, like the picture I use every day, like the face of my mother, like a ship that carried me through the wildest storm of all. There's something so raw and honest here. He speaks from the place in us that longs to belong, to be seen, to be real, and the ache of separation, that sense of when you feel like you're too small, you're too folded to fully meet life with presence. But that's where the faith is. That's where the faith in yourself is. That's the paradox of our human experience, isn't it? We are waves in a big ocean. We are unique, distinct. We have our own signature, but we're really not separable from the whole. And so then we often find ourselves asking, like, what can I trust? What's real? What does it mean to have faith? Who am I? How am I distinct and separate? But how am I also connected? And so faith in this sense, it's not blind belief. It's not about clinging to a story or a concept. It's just a deep trust in the unfolding of life and of yourself as a carrier of that life. You are absolutely magnificent. And you should trust that even in the midst of confusion or pain or uncertainty, there is something in you that knows how to meet the moment that you're in. There's something in you that knows how to meet the moment that you're in. And so I want to unfold. I don't want to stay folded anywhere, because where I am folded, there I am a lie. So the more that we can be ourselves, the more that we are going to create moments for ourselves that allow us to have faith and trust in ourselves, faith and trust that when that difficult thing happens, dang it, you are going to do the next right thing. You are not going to be constrained by fear or shame or an inherited or story or judgment that someone put on you and they tried to crease you. You're not going to do that. You're going to unfold and live in your truth, which is faith in yourself. And of course, and I've talked about this before elsewhere, this takes courage and willingness to be vulnerable, to not know, to let go of the armor of certainty. It takes the kind of faith that says, even when I feel alone, I'm not separate. Even when I feel small, I'm part of something vast and sacred. So what next step, what can you do today that makes you have a true and abiding faith and trust in yourself? Is there some place where you're folding? You know that there's a right thing to do and you're not doing it. So what is that next right step for you? Where are you avoiding that next right step? That is what's causing you not to trust yourself. So a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome. That's really a very surfacey thing. We're all going to feel that sometimes. We're all going to feel like we're in a room where we don't belong. Maybe we are in a room where we don't belong because we're in a room of people who are, narrow, who aren't expansive, who aren't wishing us well for some reason, who are trying to diminish us for their own needs. Right? And so we're not always going to be in a place that's warm, open, loving, and expansive, even though we are a part of all of those people and they are a part of us. We're not going to feel that surfacey wise in the moment. But where can we create faith in ourselves? Because we are doing those things that align with our essential nature. And that goes beyond belief. That really does. So I'll give you an example of a story when I very first connected to this idea for myself. And a lot of times that's what we do when we let people know how much their actions are having an impact. And when we honor the work of others, sometimes we're holding a faith mirror up for those folks. And somebody did that for me. And that person who did that for me was my former mother-in-law. And we had not had an easy relationship post divorce. She was not happy with me for leaving her son. And we had a very difficult time with one another for several years. She was the grandmother of my son. And so I was always kind and warm and polite. And I really wanted to be in relationship with her. I really did. I wanted that for the two of us. And I knew, I just needed to stay myself. I needed to stay patient, kind. I needed to say the right things. Needed to not act in reactivity if she was unhappy with me for some reason. I just needed to stay myself. And then at some moment, and often we find this in moments of crisis, it allows that innermost thing in our hearts to just naturally spring forward. And unfortunately, my former stepson, who is still the son of my heart, I call him my sun, moon, and stars. He was in a terrible car accident. He was actually a pedestrian, and he and his friends who were walking by the side of the road were struck by a car. And at the time that this happened, he was not in a great relationship with his father, my ex-husband at the time. And so he was in the hospital and he was struggling. And as soon as I found out, I started making arrangements to go visit, to fly across the country and go see him. I dropped work on the ground. I dropped everything I was doing on the ground because this kid was going through something terrible and he needed his family around him. Unfortunately, his girlfriend, who he had been walking with, died in the hospital a day or two later. After being struck by this car, which unfortunately, by the way, was being driven by a drunk driver. So PSA and side note, don't drink and drive. The consequences of that are horrific. So in any case, I flew across the country to see him, and through a series of actions and things that I did, which I'm not going to dig into, but needless to say, I managed to get my ex-husband there as well, even though initially he didn't want to travel because of everything that was going on in that relationship. And so my former mother-in-law, after all of this was said and done, and we were back home, and luckily my stepson, he's still with us. He recovered. There's some permanent physical disabilities that he now lives with, permanent limp, for example, and persistent pain and things like that. He'd broken so many of the bones in his body being hit by this car. But nonetheless, we had showed up for him. We had a plan for him, and he was in a good spot. And we were all working together as a family unit to wrap him in that love and support. And I was happy to be a part of it, even though I wasn't technically a part of that family any longer. When you show up, as my shirt says, when you show up in love, then everybody can still be family, and you can still come together in moments like that. So anyway, my mother-in-law said to me, or my former mother-in-law, I guess, she said to me, you know, Kathleen, I got to say, I don't always agree with you. And I don't always like your big mouth, and I don't always like your methods. But when push comes to shove, you do the right thing. You always do the right thing. And she's like, and that's why sometimes I call you Saint Kathleen. She's like, not because you're perfect, but because when it matters the most, you show up. And that really connected me to that part of myself. And so now if you ask me, you know, who I am as a friend or a family member or whatever, I'm going to tell you that when it matters the most, I always strive, do my best to have the right priorities and to show up, because that's what's most important for me, for my loved ones, for everything. And that connected to me and gave me faith in myself in those moments that I don't know what difficulty I'm going to encounter next. I don't know what crappy, awful, horrible, traumatic thing is going to happen. Something, because this is life and we're never, ever going to be able to escape these kinds of scenarios or situations. But what I can have in these moments is faith. And I build that faith, not with these big dramatic examples necessarily, although yes, with those, but I also build it day by day by taking the next right actions. And we can do this on behalf of ourselves, you know, by nourishing ourselves correctly, by living in mindfulness, by moving our bodies in ways that feel good for us, by taking care of us. And we can do it for others by taking care of others, and taking care of others in a way that they need to be cared for, not by taking over their lives or doing too much, but by doing those next right things, by speaking up in rooms that people haven't been included in, by standing up for the right principles, by being inclusive, by creating space for others to have a voice, by showing up in love and compassion everywhere we go. And ultimately, the result is going to be that a deep and abiding faith that you'll be able to have, in addition to whatever your spiritual practice might be, in addition to, you know, however you have faith in this physical world that we live in, because you do have that faith, or you'd never sit in another chair. Let me tell you, if you didn't have faith in the chair and in the earth to hold you, we would never take another step or another seat. So we do have faith in that. You can build that very same faith in yourself. And when you do, you are going to unlock enormous power to make impact and make change in the world. And whether that's your work world or your social world or your community or the world, because you're that person, that's what I wish for you today. Cheers.